Welcome to the podcast, which name we don't have yet. We'll probably have one by the end of this episode, but we'll see. Um, we are talking about music.
Indeed.
Malachi, do you want to tell them what music we're talking about today?
Today, we're talking about In My Room by Jacob Collier.
Just an absolutely... I think this album is going to be considered a classic years down the line. I think for those of you who don't know who Jacob Collier is, he is a genius. And that word gets thrown around a lot these days, but I promise you that is not an overstatement. He released this album when he was 17. It's his debut album, and his understanding of a lot of musical principles is just totally masterful on this album. I remember the first time I heard Jacob Collier, I think it was my sophomore year of high school, and I was at a friend's house, and he was just like, yo, check out this dude. And he showed me this dude who was singing this a cappella cover of Flintstones. And I was just like, okay, this is really interesting. But then he hit me with this really weird polyrhythmic thing, and I'm just like, what? And from that moment forward, like, I realized, oh shoot, this dude is wild. What was your first exposure to him, Malachi?
So, for me, I think it was also my sophomore year. That's pretty funny. But yeah, I discovered Jacob through the what was it? It was the video. I don't know if you ever seen the video where he's playing with Herbie Hancock on the Wired. He basically goes through different levels.
Classic.
Yeah.
That's classic. It gets memed so hard. One of the comments in there is Levin is a much nicer person when he's playing piano.
Right. So, I basically I had seen him around, but that's when I actually started seeing his skill or whatever. So I was like, okay, who is this dude? Why did they choose him specifically? So then I'm looking through recommendeds, I'm looking through all this stuff, and I found his reharm videos, like the I Harm You series, where he was reharming people's melodies that they sent in. So I was like, this is insane, because like I had never heard someone just through voice just the crazy harmonies, like. And then that was way before I even like listened to his music. And then I heard his music and I was like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous.
But it's absolutely insane. But this is not what we're talking about today, despite how good that stuff is. We're going to be talking about his debut album,
Yes.
In My Room. This album is this album's like, I think it's like 10 tracks long.
It's 11,
and
yeah.
it stands at like 58 minutes. It's 11 tracks long and it's 58 minutes long. So it's a little bit of a long listen, but definitely worth your time. I definitely think that everyone, regardless of how musically inclined you are, should give this album a listen. I think some of his later stuff, like some of the Jussie stuff, can err on the side of being a little bit too out there. Like, I think musicians really appreciate everything going on there, but for like the average listener, it can be a little bit daunting to try and listen to that. But this first album has some good simplicity.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, so what would you say your favorite track was, Malachi? If you had to pick one track that, if you wanted to show to someone, this is my favorite track from this album, this is what the album is, which track would you pick?
So I went back and forth on this a lot, but I would say In My Room is my favorite track. It's the one I sing the most out of all of these. But like, not discounting any of them, like it was close for a lot of them, but I'd say right now In My Room is the banger of the day.
Yeah, no, that one's way up there for me too. I think the one that I really, at least with this like last session through listening to it in preparation for this podcast episode, I think the one that really stuck with me, it was also a lot of back and forth. Like, initially it was Hideaway, but I think once I had given it a good chance of just like listening through it over and over again, I think it's The Real Early Morning.
Ooh, yes.
That track, that that track has some of the most sparse melodic ideas in sort of the opening, where it's just kind of the melody's kind of there. It's not trying too hard to be there. It's just like existing in pockets of time. And there's a lot of simplicity there. And I think this track is good because it really emphasizes his understanding of how effective simplicity can be. Especially in like that like opening 2 minutes of it with like the piano intro and like the first verse, like it's just absolutely chef's kiss, like high quality
Right, right.
content
And it's
there.
like specifically for that track, it feels like an escape from the abstract ideas at some points of the album. It's like super serene. It's like it's you can just sit there and take it in because it's still it has a lot of complex things in it, but in a compacted, compressed package that's like super consumable for the average listener. So I really enjoyed it. It's comfy.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that comfy idea. As a 16-year-old, when I first listened to this album, I didn't actually really like that track all that much, which I think is really interesting. Like I think I was like really there more for like the impressive, like him doing stuff
Right.
because he can type stuff, like tracks like Don't You Know, Woke Up Today, Savior to some degree, like those tracks where it's just like he just does things because he can, and he just pulls out all the stops, which is great. But I think as I'm maturing as a songwriter myself, and as I'm maturing as a music listener, the real restraint that he shows with that track, I think, is just absolutely beautiful.
Right. And the key there, I really like when you said restraint because he he tends to go off off the deep end sometimes, and he straddles sometimes he even straddles that line of it being too much. Like he'll be on the fence between, okay, this is super creative and out there, but if he does too much, then it becomes like hard to follow. But the thing about this track is like it's intimate. It's just him and his piano at the beginning. It's like, you know, it can be consumed, like I was saying earlier. But yeah, I really like that track as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think again this goes back to the main strength of the album, that it is very consumable for the average listener. Like I think Jacob Collier gets this reputation of being slightly avant-garde, where I think a lot of what goes on this album shows that that's really not true at all. I think what's really cool is going back and listening through it again and just seeing how sparse a lot of his tracks are as a whole. Like I think like the first example that popped up for me was on Woke Up Today, and just how sparse the instrumentation was at the beginning of it. How it was just at the beginning it was just vocals and drums alternating, but then when he added in more instrumentation, even there it was more there to kind of, I don't know, like there wasn't a lot there when he could have just easily filled it out and just been like, I'm going to throw in these 13 layer chords between 15 different instruments and it's going to be awesome. But he just plays it very sparsely, where it's just piano based drums with his vocals over top of it. And it's just sparse in a way that people don't usually think about when it
Right.
comes to Jacob Collier.
Yep, yep. Very diverse as well. But yeah, since we're talking about
Yeah.
woke up today, I it's a very interesting introduction to how it all comes together because it kind of illustrates the wildness of his mind, but at the same time putting it into its song structure, like just the insane percussion. I don't know if you've seen what's actually in his room, but he has just all these really abstract, like cultural percussion and melodic. He just has crazy stuff in his room. But I feel like in this track he just goes for it. He even has that I don't know what the instrument is. It was like a melodica solo or something like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the melodica
that was
solo in
cool.
the
That
middle.
was cool. But,
Yeah. I think the one thing that stuck out to me really rhythmically with this track is it's just absolute and utter inability to settle down. But the thing is, on this track, that isn't a bad thing. I wrote down the term micro pocket for this idea, where he never really settled down into a groove over the whole song, but there would be spots where it's like you know that the feel is not supposed to be what it's grooving as, but it just kind of grooves there for like two measures. Like in one of the instrumental breaks, he goes into this crazy like swing
right,
section
right.
where it's like at this ba 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 before, but then he goes into this ba da, da, ba da, da, and you expect it to be like, okay, this is sort of a fill thing that's going to be resolved really quickly, but then he never resolves it. And like just this sort of idea of a micro pocket where it's just in the song where it just falls into a pocket that's slightly unstable, and you can just feel that instability, but then when it gets back to the main part, you're just like, even though it's still extremely weird, you're like, this is home. And that's another thing that Jacob Collier talks about a lot, is this idea of music bringing you back home. And I think he does this rhythmically really well on this track.
Right, right. And what you were talking about the micro pockets, even how he phrases the line, the hook, the I woke up today, he'll go, I know like he'll just hop in any pocket that he feels like he wants to. And it's like it's super entertaining to listen to.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think this is actually a great introduction to the album. I think when you show this track to someone on its own without the context of the rest of the album, it definitely loses something, because it's a very chaotic track in nature. But then it just segues so beautifully into In My Room, which is like the most chill and sparse track with the juiciest harmonies over very, very sparse, very, very restricted percussion, and just like the most tasty
Yes,
bass
yes,
playing.
yes. Man, this track, it just feels like home, like you were saying. It feels like it feels like the theme that we talk about is him making it consumer friendly. And I feel like this really, if you think about the instruments, it's just a bass and then, some tiny percussion here and there. It's like the and then just harmonies. Like the rest is literally just his voice. And my favorite part, there's two parts. It's the little in my room, like whenever he does that, like you feel that the in my room, and then all the harmonies behind in my room. I was like, whoa. I just you feel that. And then the second thing I was gonna say is that jazz piano solo, it like fits so well.
My
I didn't know that was
goodness.
gonna come, but it felt so right for some reason. But yeah,
So let's just talk about the piano soloing on this record as a whole.
it's crazy.
So this is one of the craziest things. Yeah. So there's a bunch of memes that some of my friends talk about this idea that certain rappers, anybody can rap on beat, but it takes skill to rap off beat. And they're talking about Blueface and how he
Right.
doesn't rap on beat. But I think it's funny because here, the way that he's playing is so rhythmically free and so melodically free that it just feels completely unrelated to the instrumentation. But somehow he finds his way back home through all of it. And at the end, like with that little like rising thirds thing that he does, where he just does this like thing where he just, I don't think it actually key changes, but it makes it feel like a key change where the whole song is lifting. And it's just absolutely brilliant. But overall on the record, I'd say his piano soloing is really good. I really like the piano soloing on Don't You Know, where it's just like this, again, like this really sparse piano over these like really, really quiet percussive things where it's like, okay, you have this really quiet, like
Right.
kind of thing going on, everything. And it's got this piano off in this other world, but then it just settles into that pocket for once in the album. Actually, no, he settles into pockets quite a bit in the album, but that it settles into the pocket for everything to come together for the
Oh
climax
yeah.
of that
So,
track.
so
Uh,
don't you know?
but
This is so much like we could go over with that one, but I would have saved that for last because there's so much I want to talk about with Don't You Know. But
yeah, sure.
oh
But
yeah,
like, I
yeah.
was just like the piano on this album, as a whole. Like, I think also the piano on, um, again, the real early morning. Like, I think his piano playing shines through the best
Hmm.
when it's like really sparse. I heard someone say to me a while ago in reference to jazz soloing that
The
it's
notes
not
you
about the notes you play, it's
right,
about the
right. The notes
silence
you don't
between the notes.
play.
I like that way that you put it a lot better. It's not about the notes you play, but about the notes you don't play. I like that a lot better. But yeah, let's go on to, I think, what could be considered the centerpiece of the
Right.
album, Hideaway. I feel like this is definitely what everything on the album points to, is just this atmospheric masterpiece of a song.
Yes, yes, and the just the feel of all the stringed instruments, like he has the guitar, and then he's just. I was actually watching the video with this one, and he had this. I don't know if it was a mandolin or something, but he doubled himself like for each. Obviously, he shows each instrument he's playing like while he's playing it, but he had like all these string instruments, and then even he had the I don't even know what it's called, but it was just the round percussion thing that he scrapes and slaps or whatever. But the aesthetic of it is just it like you said, it represents this album as the centerpiece of this album so well. And it's like hopeful, it's rest, it rises in tension and then it comes back home. It's like a story.
Yeah, for sure. Going back to the strings, I think this idea of atmospheric, like in sort of ambient style of guitar playing, this is something that I feel is so very often looked over in a lot of modern songwriting, this idea of ambient things. Most of the time you don't get much ambience outside of like orchestral strings playing a chord where it's just like kind of low key underneath. But he pulls it off with like this very off tempo kind of picking where it's like you feel the chords that he's playing, but it's not really intended to be felt rhythmically. It's supposed to be very fluid. And I think that that is absolutely brilliant.
Yes, and as he always does, he had to have his pocket in there where he just switches to the crazy uh polyrhythmic like I can't even explain it, but he goes into that, comes out of it, goes right into the groove again, comes back out, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so insane." But and then the drum where he just like that drum little the break there. It was so groovy. Yes.
So groovy. If you've ever actually listened to Jacob Collier's talk, he doesn't he has a very thick British accent, which we both think is absolutely hilarious. And he'll say, "That's a
Grove.
really nice
Yes.
grove."
Yes, yes.
I think if we wanted to really talk about Grove, we would want to go to
Yes.
Saviour, but we'll
Yes.
save that for when we get there. One last note for Hideaway is the brilliant melody writing on this piece in the verses, or I don't know what to call them because it's like an A section and a B section. It's not exactly a verse and a chorus, but like in the A section, the melody is just absolutely stunning. And like the chords underneath it are fairly diatonic, so it's like fairly simple stuff, but it's just so powerful that when you get back to that section again at the very end after the big buildup of like the bridge, where you have this like large drum percussion and piano buildup, and it just opens back up into that main section. No weird melody would have worked there. He knew that he had to pick something that was very simple, very super duper melodically pleasing to open back up into. And that just
Right,
shows
and
his
that
tact as a
goes also
songwriter.
back into what you were commenting about. What was it about in the early morning, where he kind of he's very sparse with how he uses each of his instruments and very intentional about it, and that, like you said, is marks of a really strong composer, strong songwriter, melody writer that you don't put in there what doesn't need to be put in there.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. Now let's go on to the next
Yep.
track, You and I. This is harmonies on display in their finest form. This is one of two a cappella tracks on this album. You have this and you have Flintstones. I mean, Flintstones has a melodica solo in the middle, but You and I is incredible. Like I said, it's his harmonies just on display in their full beauty. I like the way that he starts simple with just like very simple harmonic ideas, expressing the ideas. And once you're familiar with the melody and the basic harmony, he just like blows up your expectations and drops these just absolutely gorgeous and stunning, like melodic drops over the top, just like these bass lines, like everything about it is just
Yeah,
absolutely
I
beautiful.
really enjoy the song, and the thing about this song is I really like the original. So, like, when I saw that he covered this, I was like, okay, he has to come here different because, like, Stevie Wonder, like, come on, that original is just a vibe. So, he definitely brought something totally new to this really already good song, and he just Jacob Colliered it up, bro. Like, it's some things you really can't describe except for it's just fully Jacob Collier, like all the harmonies, the ways that he just switches the groove and comes back. It's just a very Jacob Collier song. If you hear enough of his music, you it
Yeah,
definitely is.
it's actually really interesting because listening to this, I actually feel like this is the most rhythmically strict song on the
Yeah.
album. Like, if you just listen to it, he stays at the fairly the same meter. Like, he does a little bit of dramatic slow down and speed up, but overall, like, it's pretty much in 4/4 all the way through, with like a few like fermatas and stuff here and there, like to just like kind of draw things out. But it's so disciplined in its rhythm
Right.
so that the harmonies can shine.
That's the main thing, the harmony shining on these acapella vocal tracks.
Yes, for sure. And then we have down the line when the album hits like what I like to think
Oh
of as
yeah,
the
the
grooviest
groove
section,
strip.
the grooviest section of the album. This is the groove strip. If you like to just like feel the groove and just like stank face and all that stuff, like if you just like that feeling of like, oh my gosh, this is grooving so hard, and you can't help but to just like bounce back and forth in your car or wherever you're listening to it, like these next three songs are just like absolutely the grooviest thing ever. So let's
Yep.
talk about down the line first. um he starts it out with this very tight kind of
Mhm.
kind of thing where it's like the drumming pattern is very tight, not super complex, very very just kind of understated, and then like he has these like cool vocal patterns going rhythmically as
Yeah, he
well. um and then
Oh, I was gonna say
he
he had
go
some
ahead.
really unique percussion in there too. I don't remember exactly what sound. There was some weird percussion in there that I was like, "Oh, this just adds to that jungle safari vibe of the whole song."
Yeah, like the bongos at the beginning are great. I think when you get into the center of the song, I think this song is
Oh, for sure.
carried by his bass playing. Like, I think if you're going to take away any one instrument approach on this album that is his strongest besides his singing, I think his singing and harmony writing is clearly the best thing about his overall ability as a composer. I think as far as his instrumentation goes, mine vocals aside, I'd say his bass playing is just the sickest thing ever. It is just absolutely. He does things that I feel
Yeah,
like should be illegal. They're so
he
tasty.
just uh, right. It just
So
falls in
dirty.
like, and then just and so like sometimes you just gotta sit there and you don't know what to do with your body. You just like, I'm tensing up so much because the stank face is it's hurts.
Yeah, the stank face hurts. I feel that. I
Like,
feel that. Um, yes, but for this one, I think when it just drops from the A section into the B section, where it just where he just brings it in with down the line, and then it's just like this big drop of this, and then it's like kind of this. I don't know what kind of a swing it is. He talks about swings and percentages a lot in his interviews, and but I don't know what kind of swing this is. But it's clearly not a classic tree swing, but it's just like this very, very aggressive, just digging into the bass as much as possible rhythmically. And it's just like when you get back to that
right.
downbeat of that
Oh yeah, the pulsing, like the
kind
I
of
remember
thing,
there was like a
like,
heartbeat or something, like a doo, doo.
yeah. And then after this, like it just kind of, I like how this song just opens up. It all builds to the instrumental solo, and then it just kind of settles down to the kind of calm conclusion. And then you get to Now and Then, which is really is a lot of work for 58 seconds of audio
Okay,
for
so
you. You mind telling
when
them
we
that
were trying
story?
to get this prepared and I was, re-listening to everything, I on YouTube, you can't listen to this track because you need premium for it. So I was like, okay, let me just Ryan was telling me, "Oh, just go on the computer on Spotify." And I was like, "Okay." And it took so much effort and then I listened and I'm like, "Bro, this is 50 seconds." but for the actual track, Jacob actually does this a lot with his projects. He either will speed through, songs that he's already done or kind of reverse some stuff and do this weird aesthetic where it's like replaying some parts of the song. He even does it on Jesse 3 where he's like playing the beginnings of each or playing like pockets of the groove backwards or, some ambient stuff, but he loves doing this and I've noticed.
Yeah, I feel like this is the perfect transition to into what I think is
Oh yeah.
the grooviest song of all time. That might be a little bit
Oh
of an
man.
overstatement, but you can't knock
It's
it
so
until you
juicy.
listen to this, especially after transitioning to it from Now and Then. It's just like this, like Now and Then is just sort of this kind of eclectic mashy mess of like a bunch of sounds that's like slowly picking up into where the groove comes in, and then just Savior drops, and it's just like this absolutely funky, disgusting, filthy groove. Like
It's
I can't think of any good words to describe it outside of this. Like it it makes me feel like, oh my gosh.
bro,
It makes me want to go buy
it's
a
funny because
bass.
half of my notes on this song are just groove, bass groove, slow part, soulful groove. Like I'm not even joking. It's so funny.
That is excellent. I wrote on mine the
Um,
thickest grove, and I think that is the perfect way to talk about this. I don't think we need to mention anything else about this track except for that. Actually, no, we do. We need to mention when he
oh
double
yeah, yeah,
times the
yeah.
chorus
That was cool.
and he just slows it down, and then the drum the drum fill back into the main section is just so slightly off of what you would expect. Like he adds in like an extra half a beat or something, but it just is it's so effective, and it just like throws you off for a second, and then it's just like hits you with that hit groove back at you again, and it's just like it's this song is a masterpiece of groove. Like I I don't want to say anything else about it because this is one of those songs where it's like you'll understand what I'm talking about when you go and listen to this track. Like if you listen to no other song from this album, actually no, like I was gonna say listen to this song, but then I think of like five other songs that I feel like are essential
Yep.
to the listening experience. It's just like you know it's a good album and you're like, this is my favorite song, but then the next song plays and you're like, oh shoot, this is my favorite song. Then the next song plays, oh
Right,
shoot,
right.
this is my
And
favorite song.
from that groove into Hajanga, bro. That
I feel like the other centerpiece where it's like I feel like Hideaway and Hajanga parallel each other really well in like the arrangement style. They both have a lot of this sort of ambient vibe to them and have
right.
similar song structures, I suppose.
Yeah,
But
it
I
gives
feel
me
like they
the
parallel each
like
other very well.
traditional like folk song groove. It's like the dun, 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 dun. It's like a Frozen song, but like on steroids because it has like all the
Yeah.
solos and the polyrhythms and craziness. But yeah,
It's nutty, bro. Like I think I really like this is another good example of how good he is at doing build up for things. Like his build up to the instrumental is just absolutely brilliant. And also, so one thing that I really like about Jacob Collier's music, and this is the note that I have for this track right here, all I have written for this track is very open. And music to my ears is either closed music or open music. And I think closed music is more suited to like just like the groovy stuff, and Saviour is a very closed track, and that's what I think makes it so effective as a groovy track. And this is I don't know if this is something that you hear as well, but this is the way that I kind of think about music is if it's got like a lot of ambient open chords and these longer notes, longer melodies, kind of overall just like less staccato. I feel it's more open. But if it's more staccato and a lot more shorter stuff, tighter rhythms, like that feels a
right,
lot more
right,
closed. Yeah, but I think Hajanga does that very well. I think that this track is the very definition of an open song. I think this and Hideaway are both extremely open, extremely inviting, extremely like it feels like you're outside on a summer's day, but it's like not hot. It's like it's you've got the breeze going and you've got the sun is shining and then you've got the trees rustling around you and you've got squirrels hopping by everywhere. It's just absolutely this beautiful feeling of a song. And I think part of this
right.
association also comes with the music
I
video
really
for
like the
Hajanga. It's a really cool music
it
video.
gives me like the line where it goes like "dun-dun-dun-dun-dun" with the synth. It just makes you feel like yeah, like you're playing Wii Sports or something. It's like super just upbeat, like whoa, this is a vibe.
Episode 2 review
Yes,
the Wii Sports soundtrack. And then we get to Flintstones, which I oddly feel like is one of the most simply arranged tracks on the thing. Like there's the least going on this track, I feel like, which is really weird because rhythmically it's got some of the most complex
hmm
ideas in the whole
yeah.
album.
The whole beatbox section, another melodica solo. It's like, and then it turns into this jazzy, like somewhere near the end, it switches to this super, cocktail snappy, jazzy vibe. I'm like, whoa, this has so many textures, and not to mention the crazy voices.
Yeah, the section that really got me was when he had each of so how he recorded this one is he had like 12 of himself record this or something like this. And he recorded this section where it was like a section of like a speed of like kind of notes, but he split it up between all of his different parts. And so you just got this beautiful effect of him just like singing all of these different notes rhythmically perfectly. And it was just this beautiful effect of like, oh shoot, like he's singing this like weird arpeggiation or scale or something across all of his different voices really quickly. And it's just super unearthly. And it's just like, the heck is this? But it's
Yes,
so
and
cool.
I have in my notes. I don't even remember what happened, but it was like yabba dabba doo. Was there a moment where he just went yabba dabba doo, yabba dabba doo, and then he has like all the harmonies? Now I remember. Yeah,
Oh, the
something like
bass
that.
does that? I never caught that.
But yeah, it was cool. And then into this in the early morning, which we kind
Yeah.
of briefly talked about, but just really serene, intimate, like piano and Jacob Collier track. I feel like it can be its own, ballad. Super simple and consumable.
Yeah, no, this one there's not much to say about it, but this is this is a prime example of keep it simple, stupid, where it's so easy to overcomplicate things, but then you just have this beautiful track that's just so simple. It's got such an emotional climax in the middle, and it's got all of these very sparse piano tones, very sparse percussion here and there. It's not like it's more ambient percussion than anything else, but it's overall just a really well constructed track. And I think this is probably the most
Hmm.
like consumable to the average consumer kind of song on the album. And I think this is just like a prime example of a song doesn't have to
Right.
be complex to be this beautiful. In fact, sometimes
Exactly.
simplicity
And
just makes it more
I get
beautiful.
the vibe of this. I have a playlist on Spotify called Staring at the Ceiling. And this is definitely one of those that, maybe it's late at night and I'm just like looking up at the ceiling fan or the ceiling, and it's a good 6 minute song, and it doesn't do anything too crazy. It's just kind of hypnotic, and even if you listen to the lyrics, it's like super emotional. It's he says like you are a father, and like talking about relationships and stuff like that, but it's super just intimate and very easy to listen to.
Yeah, it's a really nice. I think that this is a really nice kind of emotional
Yes.
closer before the grand
Yes.
finale that is Don't You Know. This is where he pulled all the stops. This is where he took out, he's like, okay, now I'm going to hit mass chaos
Oh my
level,
gosh.
mass groove, massive just harmonies, and it's a behemoth of a piece. I'm just gonna put it that way. It actually stays fairly rhythmically grounded for the most part, in comparison to the album opener Woke Up Today. Um, but at the same time, it just has all of these like it has all of this like it has this like really like this
Hmm.
6 minute long instrumental section in the middle. He just like spends 6 minutes, and I talked about the piano part. He spends 6 minutes building up to where everything drops out, and it's just these just
Right. And
absolutely
the way
immaculate
I think of
harmonies.
this track is like it feels like a run-on sentence that that last thought of the sentence is turned into another idea. It's like saying I went to the store and then storage unit or unit test. Like it feels like it's just the end is always turned into some new groove. And like you said, he just puts everything, like I feel like he just dumps, obviously in a really creative way, but he puts so much in this last track, and I feel like it also parallels the kind of sporadic nature of the first song, but at the same time having just this grand finale of um just all these grooves at once. And we gotta talk about those drum chops though. Like those drums are insane.
Those drums, man. I
Ah,
think the drums on this track are probably my favorite. This was one of my favorite. I got to see him live, and this is probably one of my favorite tracks to see him perform live. Um, this was really. This was the I think this was the first finale song
yeah.
out of like 7 or 8 finale songs, if I remember correctly. But this was just so crazy. It was him and like four other musicians or three other musicians up on stage, and it was just like there was just someone just playing at the beginning. It just has this repetitive like chord played over again on the piano. That's just like a thing. But then you just have the drums going crazy behind it, and the bass doing whatever the heck he wants the bass to do, and it's just like this build up with just this steady piano chord going behind it, just tying everything together into the main section of like the vocals, and then further into the instrumental part where everything just kind of, I don't know, like it's trying to describe this track is very hard to do. This is another track you just
Oh,
need to
and
go
that
listen to.
ending
It's
part with
just
like the organ,
insane.
and it just gives me this really upbeat like gospel vibe. Like the Baptist church and people running up and down the
I can see
aisles, just
that.
like, yes, dun, 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 tick, 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 and then the preacher's like, and the Lord said, dun, 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 yeah, like it's, and also it seems super fun to play live. Like, ah, I probably, if I played this live, that I feel like that would be so fun. Um,
That would that would be so sick if you could keep up. I feel like this could definitely be like a giant steps kind of thing. If I'm remembering correctly, when Coltrane originally recorded Giant Steps, he he hit him with that
yep,
really
yep.
fast tempo and the piano player couldn't keep up or something. Like I feel like that would be me trying to play this song live. Like I have so much further to go as a musician to be able to play this song. Um, but yeah, no, this one was incredible live. I think most of these songs I got to hear live. He played. This was after he released Jesse Volume One, so I think I got pretty much most all of his discography at that point because he had only released two albums and he had a bunch of singles out. But this song just really stuck with me. Hearing the live performance of it, like, but overall, this is just an incredible album. I think overall, I think my favorite part on this recent, like, in preparation for the podcast listen through was just my awareness of his overall sense of sparseness and his restraint. Like I think he doesn't get enough credit
Yeah,
for the
I definitely
restraint that he
agree.
does have.
And when I first found him, I was like, "Whoa, this dude's crazy! Like, he literally is the modern genius, all this stuff." And then, ironically, as I listened to him more, I came to more of an appreciation of him from the less complex stuff. Obviously, there's a place for all these crazy harmonies, and even if you watch his theory videos where he explains what's going on in his brain, it's just insane. But those simple moments really have more of a beauty to it, and it's even transitioning out of Don't You Know, like the whole track just stops. There's no transition out. It just ends. And then it's an interesting loop back to Woke Up Today. Like when I first heard it, it stops and then the whole thing starts over, and it took me a minute to realize I'm listening to the album again, but it's a perfect loop.
Yeah, I think a small detail that I really like is at the end of the album, after the last
Mhm.
track finishes, you can hear a door close or a door open. Like you can hear him like leaving the studio or whatever. And that's just like a such a small detail, but it's a really cool added effect where it's like, okay, this is the end of the day. And then like you said, it kind of loops back into the first track
I woke
where
up
it's like,
to
oh
the
shoot, it's another day.
like a whole
Back
day
to the
in
wildness of
Jacob
Jacob
Collier,
Collier.
not only just in his room, but in his
Fire.
brain. And that's what I feel like, that's what I just feel while listening to this. I'm not only just in his musical talent, but I'm also inside of a small drop of his brain. What's going on up there?
Yeah, but that is In My Room by Jacob Collier. I would give, I'm not a fan of giving albums numbers because I feel like to me, an album
Right.
could be like a 9 or a 10, and to Malachi, it could just be like a 7. But I would give this album on a rating of like, did it achieve what it set out
Right.
to
I
do?
would say
I
the
would say
same.
it
And I
did, and it did
agree
it
with the
brilliantly.
ratings that it's really slippery slope. But this was an amazing album. Check it out on your own. And yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for tuning in
Podcast outro
to
music.
podcast